This video will contain spoilers for up to chapter 13 of Gilded by Marissa Meyer. The book's been out for a while, but just in case, there will be spoilers up to chapter 13. So, I've talked a little bit about the book earlier, but I'm going to go through a few things. The story is about Cyrilla, whose father went and asked one of the gods for a child, thinking that it was the god of stories, but really it was, not realizing that the god of stories was actually a trickster god, and sort of tricked and made it so that Cyrilla, whenever she would tell her stories, no one would really believe her. Like, she's able to, like, just make up a story off the top of her head, and, like, and I have a theory about that in a minute, but I'll get to that. So, she's going throughout her life, and she tells all these elaborate stories, and a lot of the, like, she's like 18, I believe. The children love her because she tells these, like, elaborate stories, and they love listening to it, and the adults, they're like, sweetie. But at one point, she's going home, and these, little fae come along, and they're like, please hide us, because the Earl King, which is the leader of the Dark Hunt, is coming to, capture them, and we find out later that he actually wanted to capture them because he wanted to cut off their heads and mount them on a wall. So, the Earl King comes, and she's trying to make up this story, like, just to get him to go away. And she tells him, like, oh, yeah, like, I can spin straw into gold. And this is a Rumpelstiltskin kind of retelling, right? So, she thinks nothing of this. She goes about her days. She's telling everybody these elaborate stories. No one believes her. Her father doesn't believe her because, that's part of her curse. And the one thing I find interesting about this story is that we are talking, and there's so much discussion going on about unreliable narrators, and Cyrilla being somebody who is, in a way, it's not really a curse, but I guess we can call it sort of like a curse, to never truly be believed, or to be able to spin lies, which spinning obviously is a very prominent thing throughout this story, at least up to chapter 13 anyways, that you can't truly trust everything she's saying to you, and I'm wondering, like, throughout the story, because, like, it's not like she's lying the entire time. She'll just embellish a few things, like, she'll add, like, oh, he clenched his fist out of anger, but in reality, he was not really doing that, like, she'll embellish a few things, and I find that interesting, and wondering, like, how much of the story can I, the reader, actually trust Cyrilla, and I like that. So, obviously, the Earl King, is like, can you really spin it all into gold? Can you? Let's find out, or I'll cut your head off, and I'll put you on my wall, because you, took away my original plan. So she's like, so he takes her and he puts her in a dungeon, and with a bunch of straw. And if you know the story of Rumpelstiltskin, which if I remember correctly, the original version of the story, he asks for her firstborn child. Now, this is a young adult novel, so that's not how things go down. Earlier in the story, I forgot to mention, Cyrilla receives from the three fae that she helps, a locket with a picture of a young girl in it, and a ring with a sigil on it that's an R. So, when she's in the dungeon, and she's, like, freaking out because she's like, what do I do? Now, mind you, this entire castle is filled with ghosts. Everyone's dead in this castle, right? So, she's crying, and all of a sudden, this boy appears about her. He's a little bit older than her, like, either her age or a little bit younger or a little bit older. Like, they're around the same age. And he's like, what you doing? And she's, like, startled and all, like, and I'm not gonna do the whole thing, but basically he ends up he's what I'm assuming is he's the Rumpelstiltskin character. He goes by Gild, and he agrees to help her in exchange for her locket. And she's like, I have no connection to it, and he feels this connection to the picture within the locket. Now, obviously, if you know the story of Rumpelstiltskin, he ends up spinning the straw into gold, and I don't remember the rest of the story of Rumpelstiltskin, but I have not gotten, like, the Earl King has just now come in and be like, oh my god, you spun straw into gold, and she's like, oh yeah, it was so me. But one thing I find interesting is Cirilla tells she's like, do you want me to tell you a story while you work? And Gild's like, yeah, sure, whatever. So she starts telling him this story about the whole thing about, like, the Earl King, and he goes out in the wild hunt and he steals children to bring back to his wife so that she can have a child. But then the wife will get bored and he'll go out and find another one. So one day he goes and he finds this young girl and he steals her, but her brother realizes it and he hunts her down, and the brother kills the Earl Queen's wife, and the Earl King kills the sister, and then the brother is torn apart by the wild hunt, by the hounds. And I don't know for 100% if this is how the story is going to go, but I think it would be interesting. And don't tell me, I don't want to know yet. I want to find out. I think it would be interesting if Cirilla's stories are actually real, like, and if not, like, that would be a really interesting, like, dynamic for a character where they're telling these stories and everyone thinks that they're, like, not real, but in reality they're actually pulling stories from real people's stories, like, just being able to do that. And I have this weird inkling feeling that the story that she told to Gild is actually Gild's story, and that Gild was the brother that tried to save his little sister, and the little sister is actually the girl in the locket, and that he was somehow cursed to forget what happened. And because at one point he says that the castle that they're in is not the Earl King's castle. And I'm starting to wonder, is that his castle? I don't know. But regardless, I am actually really, really enjoying this. Like, this is a lot of fun. Like, a lot of fun. There's scary fairies, the wild hunt. I think if you are somebody who's like, where's the romance? I think there's, like, a little bit, like, it's, like, upper YA, so there's gonna be, like, some, little sprinkles. But, like, the story's engaging, Cirilla's engaging, Gild's fun. It's just, this, so far, I am really, really enjoying this. So, yeah. Anyways, hope you all have a lovely Friday, and this video is going to contain spoilers for Gilded by Marissa Meyer up to chapter 29. So, in my last video I made about Gilded, Cirilla had been taken to the Earl King and told to spin straw into gold. That's where she met Gild, who helped her in exchange for her necklace. So she ends up going home, and before she went home, actually, she, as the daylight comes, she realized that the castle she's in is actually in ruins. So the castle is only looking like normal castle, I guess, during full moons and equinoxes. So she leaves the castle, but she's also afraid that perhaps, because the whole thing, like, a lot of times with the Fae, like, you'll go into the fairy realm and then you'll leave, and for you it's been maybe a night, but by the time you get back, it's been 100 years, So she's afraid that that's happened to her. So she comes out and she ends up in this town called Alderhide, which is, like, right outside of the castle. And of course, like, everyone's, like, freaked out because, like, no one ever comes back from that castle. They're like, why are you here? What's going on? Hello? So she comes out and she meets some of the townspeople, and then she's like, I gotta go home, I gotta go see my father. So she goes home. Her father's like, oh my god, I'm not gonna let this happen again. the hunt took your mother, and I'm not going to let the hunt take you, because this is going to keep happening. Because, like, a guy like the Earl King isn't just going to randomly decide, okay, you spun me some straw into gold, so it's going to take you one time. Like, no, that's not going to happen. So, they make this big elaborate plan. They're going to leave, and they're going to put, like, cotton in their ears or wax in their ears so that the Earl King can't, call them with the wild hunt. That doesn't work. Spoiler alert, that doesn't work. They get taken on the wild hunt. Now, there is a woman in the wild hunt that stands out to Cirilla, and she kind of, like, winks at her, and I'm wondering if that's her mother. I don't know. Because we know her mother was taken by the hunt. But we don't know what happened to her. We don't know if she's a ghost in the castle. We don't know if she's dead. We don't know if she's just wandering around somewhere. It got lost, and that she's just living somewhere and didn't know how to get back. But, so they could take on the wild hunt. Her father, we don't know what's happened to her father. We don't know if her father is dead. We don't know if her father's alive, or if he's stuck in the castle as a ghost. According to the Earl King, he fell off of his horse somewhere along the ride, and he doesn't care where he is. So he puts her in a room and is like, hey, I would like you to spin the straw into gold. And you have less time and more straw. So, of course, Gild shows up again, and he helps her. She finishes the story. Not finishes. She gets to the story she was telling Gild in the last video talking about. But there's, like, this part where she gets to the end of it almost, and there's an old woman, but then she gets cut off because Gild, like, touches her arm, and he's like, you're so soft. Because he hasn't been around, like, people who are alive, so, like, her being, like, an actual alive person, he's like, ooh, you have soft skin. She's like, what the fuck? But she's also, like, you can tell there's, like, this, like, slight attraction to each other. He tells her, like, at one point, she's like, oh, I'm not a fair beauty, and he's like, what do you mean you're not a fair beauty? Like, you're beautiful, like, you're pretty, you're really pretty. And it's, like, this awkward exchange between the two of them is really, really cute. But, so we find out that Gild cannot leave the castle, but that he will go up to the tower, and he will look at this around the city and the children, and he's really happy to, like, watch them, but he wants to be among them, but he can't. It's really sad. And then they have a very, very quick kiss. Like, it's right before, the Earl King is gonna come back, and he very quickly kisses her. Like, but she has no time to, like, really process this, because the Earl King comes in, and he's like, you had better be available next full moon. I'm not doing this again. Thank you very much. So she decides she's going to get out the city, and she goes home hoping that her father will be there. Her father's not there. She returns back to Alderhide, and there is a festival going on. So the thing about the Earl King is the Earl King will steal children for his wife, which the wife is, I don't know. In Cirilla's story, the wife is dead. But I don't know if Cirilla's story is actually what actually happened, so I'm not 100% sure what's going on with the actual wife. So he steals children, but he doesn't steal children from Alderhide because they have this huge feast. And it is where I am right now in chapter 29. It is the night before it is the night of the feast. Like, right before they're getting everything set up, and Cirilla's like, I'm gonna go talk to the Earl King, and the woman that, I forget her name, I'm terrible with names, that she's like the mayor of Alderhide. She's like, don't you dare mess this up for me, which means she's gonna mess it up. Okay, I'm just putting that out there. I don't know. Don't tell me if she's actually gonna mess it up. I don't want to know until I know. And I think that the daughter of the mayor is gonna get taken. But I also think that possibly that she'll end up going into the castle to see Gild. And we find out that Gild actually, while he can't leave the castle, so I'm wondering if I think he's able to get at least far enough on the bridge. And at night he leaves these, like, because he can make anything into gold. He makes straw into gold, anything into gold. So he'll um, leave these golden trinkets everywhere. And that is why Alderhide is prospering where, like, the town that Cirilla's from is not. And it's a big secret because if anyone were to find out about this, it would be this. Obviously, if a town was getting a bunch of gold and a bunch of people found, and like people found out about it, it would be a big deal. So that's where I am right now. We will see what goes down later on. This kind of makes me want to read, like, what the cider, I think it's called, which was out years ago. Like, cider was out years ago. Cinder, not cider, cinder. Cinder was out years ago. Which I think is a Cinderella retelling, and she's a part robot, I think. I don't 100% know, but I feel like I need to read that now, but I have so many other books that I need to read, because, like, my goal, and I had a video that I was going to make about this, but I'm just going to talk about it right here, right now. I had a goal, for this year to read a lot more, to write a lot more, and sort of do, like, an alternating thing where, like, cause I did this in high school and in middle school, and I read, like, obviously I didn't have TikTok or, like, the internet, so obviously my attention was not, whatever. Where, like, one day was completely dedicated to reading, one day was completely dedicated to writing, doing something like that. Like, obviously I want to read on a writing day, I can, and vice versa, I can do that, but, yeah. So, that's where we are. I will update you guys a little later on when we'll see how far. I'm not sure how many chapters there actually are. I'm both reading it and listening to it, so, like, obviously both are reading, but, like, reading and reading. So, yeah. Anyways, bye. This video will contain spoilers up to chapter 34 of Gilded by Marissa and Meyer, so, yeah. Where we left off last time, I believe, Cirilla was going back to see if her father was home after the wild hunt. She gets there, he's not. So she's like, and she had made this deal with the Earl King that she would return to Alderhide during the full moon, right? So she decides to go there a little bit early because this equinox is coming up, and during the equinox, the townspeople of Alderhide set up this big feast for the hunt, and that is why the hunt doesn't, like, take their children. So she decides she's going to sneak into the castle, find Gild, and sort of find out maybe what's going on. So, during the daytime, when either the full moon's not up or the equinox is not occurring, there is a room with the tapestry. And this room with the tapestry has this, looks like a little girl with this curly hair, and it reminds her of the girl in the locket, right? So, but there's these creatures called druids that are in that room. And it sort of seems like they're guarding something, right? There's something in a cage, and she wasn't able to see it because this druid comes and it clamps onto her shoulder, and it is giving her all these nightmares. And the way that the druids kill you is basically makes you relive your nightmares over and over and over again until your heart stops. So of course Gild saves her, and he takes her up to the to his tower, and they're having this lovely, and they're talking, and I think I mentioned the last video, he does this thing where he makes gold figurines and he tosses it into the river so that the townspeople after the festival, that they're not even they gather all this food and they're not allowed to eat any of it. It's only for the hunt. So Gild gives them all this gold so they can replenish everything. And he goes up there with Cirilla, and they're throwing the gold into the water for the next day. And then there's like this point where he's like
kind of distant from her, and she's like, what, why are you distant from me? Like, you kissed me, like, last time I was here, like, what is going on? And he's like, I shouldn't have kissed you, like, you're a lady. And she's like, I'm not a lady. No, it's not exactly what she said, but, and he was like, she's like, I'm not pretty, I'm, like, no one, because the thing about Cirilla is that even if somebody in her town is like, oh my god, that girl's really pretty, they get up close to her and they see these, like, golden rings in her eyes and automatically, like, no. Because the golden rings sort of symbolize that she's cursed, there's something wrong with her, so they're like, no, I'm not doing this. So, and Gild is the first person to see beyond those gold rings in her eyes. And they go up to his tower, and they're about to, like, make out. Alright, it's finally gonna happen. And they all of a sudden hear this shrill shriek that, because the thing about Gild is he also does these pranks throughout the castle, and we find out a little bit more about some of the other ghosts that live in the castle. And they go down, they sneak down the loft, because he did something where he messed with the hounds, basically, and the woman, the ghost woman that is in charge of the hounds, it was not very happy about it, and would know there's, like, nowhere to hide up in the loft. So they go downstairs and they hide in this, like, little corner. And while they're in there, that is where they have their real, like, first, like, true kiss. And then Equinox is over. So because Equinox is over, she cannot see Gild. So she can only see the Gild and the ghost and everything else, while it is either the spring equinox, like an equinox, or a full moon. And it's longer. And she's like, is he still there? Because, like, there was, like, one point where she had gone up to his loft, his tower, when it was during the daytime, and she sort of felt like something in the back of her neck. She was like, is he there? And she was wondering, like, is he there? And so she leaves, the, like, where she was hiding, and she sees something, like, etched into the dust, and it says, will you come back? And I was just like, because, like, and I forget who made this video, alright, but young adult books, like YA, get yearning down. Like, you can feel the yearning. Like, you have Cirilla, who is this young girl. She's 18 years old, and she has never really felt like that kind of, like, she has the love of her father, and even that, like, she doesn't know if her father's alive or dead, but she's had feelings for other boys her age, but anytime she's ever entertained that idea, they turn away. They don't want to be with her because they think there's something wrong with her. And then you have someone like Gild, who has, as far as he can remember, has never felt physical touch, has never felt physical intimacy, whether that's a platonic or romantic or whatever. Like, obviously this is a romantic, like, feeling, but, and it's just very interesting that they are sort of these two touch-starved people and love-starved people who are coming together. And another thing, something that I had picked up on a couple of videos before this, was wondering about if Cirilla's story about the brother and sister, and the sister getting captured and then getting killed, and then him getting, if that was real, And I'm starting to think more and more that it is. I don't remember the exact, like, I guess I should, like, I don't know, I should, like, tapped it on the way I didn't. But yeah, I'm really starting to think that when she's, like, literally, like, telling the story, and that she's not just telling anyone's story, that she's telling Gild's story, that she's telling Gild his own story that he doesn't even remember. And there's still more to her story that she needs to tell. And that is my story, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, cool. Have a lovely evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
This video will contain spoilers up to chapter 42 of Gilded by Marissa Meyer. So let's talk about it. So Cirilla goes to the castle again because it is another full moon and she has to meet up with the king, with the Elder King, and spin the straw in gold, but really we know that it is Gild who is doing it. So she goes over there and she's like there's like a bridge, and then like the wild hunt is gonna go out. So basically the whole thing is like while the wild hunt is doing what they do, she's supposed to be spinning the gold, right? So she's standing there and she's talking to the Elder King, and she's like, oh, there's this like random creature that's like, you know, I've heard this story about this random creature and it's out in the woods over by this far away place. And he's like, oh really? Okay. So he rides off and she goes into the castle and they take her to the room, and there's like more straw than like was before, right? And she's like, Gild, you gonna like this? And then Gild appears and they fall into the straw, and he was like, I was really hoping that there wouldn't be as much straw so we could have more time together. And then she's like, we could just work really fast. So they start working really fast, and she continues the rest of her story, which I am still convinced that her story that she's telling to Gild is actually Gild's story. Because there's a part in the story where she kind of switches over to the Elder King's point of view, because she's telling a story about the Elder King and she thinks she's making it up, where the Elder King is talking about how he's going to make sure that the prince that killed his wife is going to suffer as much as he suffers. And I think the Elder King cursed Gild so that Gild was neither alive nor dead and could never leave the castle. But he also doesn't necessarily know that he can spin straw into gold. He can make things, it's not just straw, he can make anything into gold. And I think I mentioned this in the last video. So that is interesting. And then, so they finish, you know, spinning the straw into gold, they do all that. And this is where we have the first time that they ever have a true time alone together without like being interrupted, and they do the deed. And of course it is YA, so it is, you know, behind closed doors. But she wakes up and she's like, because the Elder King's like, hello, how you doing? But luckily Gild is not there, and he's like, you fell asleep. And she's like, yeah, but oh, and also I forgot to mention, she takes one of the bobbins of spun gold and sticks it in her pocket, and I'm like, you put that thing back, so God help me. But like, I don't know what's gonna happen with that yet. So he takes her down. So the Elder King takes her downstairs, and he's like, I want to show you something. And he basically shows her that what he's using the spun gold for is to make these chains for different creatures. I don't know. I have my brain's going somewhere, but I'm not going to mention it because I don't know. And he's like, basically, but like he was going to tell her a little bit more, but then like sunrise came, so he couldn't. And where I am right now, she's being led away by this like little hobgoblin dude, and he's taking her somewhere. Who knows where? I don't know. But yeah, so I didn't really get very far yesterday because I had to work, and yeah, but is where we are at this current moment. So I should probably go into work now, because so I can go home and go to bed, because I have migraine. Oh, I forgot to mention, there's another thing before I go. So of course, when they're doing this spinning the straw into gold thing, he has to ask her for a gift. It has to be something tangible. And she's like, I don't have anything. Like, I gave you the necklace, I gave you the ring, I have nothing else left to give you. Can I give you like a lock of hair? And he's like, no, it has to be something of value to you. And she's like, well, what about something in the future? And he's like what? She's like, now, if you know the story of Rumpelstiltskin, she offers up her firstborn child. Now, what is that necessarily going to mean in this story? I don't necessarily know. But she does use that as her bargaining chip with Gilded at this point. So yeah, I just forgot to say that. So, bye again. This video is going to contain spoilers for the ending of Gilded by Marissa Meyer. I did finish it today, so let's kind of talk about it a little bit. So where we left off my last video, Cyrilla was being taken by this little like hobgoblin creature, where she meets up with some of the other fae, and they warn her of the possibility of what the Alder King wants, and that is he wants to use the golden chains to capture a god and ask for a wish from that god. And that would be to bring back his wife, who was even more terrible than the Alder King is. So Cyrilla agrees that she will not ask Gil to spend any more gold, and she goes back to her house. While she's there, she realizes that one of the women who live there, who she's never really liked, is actually a witch, and that she helps her to fake her death and all that. However, the Alder King is not so easily tricked, and he steals 5 children from the town. These 5 children happen to be the ones that Cyrilla is close to, and she tells her stories to. So she grabs a horse, and she's going to, there's this wood that has all of the, like, the fae in it, and, like, people usually don't go into it. And she goes in, and I do have to say, there's a trigger warning. She finds, I'm gonna give you a moment. She finds 4 of the 5 children. Their bodies are, yeah, they're basically have been unalived. And there's 1 more left, and she doesn't know what has happened to them, so she rides off to the, to Alder Hall, whatever. She rides off to the castle. But the thing is, it is not the full moon, nor is it a solstice. So she cannot enter into the castle. But she goes and she meets up with the woman who lived, who was the mayor of that town, and she's like, is your daughter still here? And luckily her daughter is still there. They did not take her, because I thought they were going to take the daughter from the town, but they didn't. So she rides up to the castle, and she's trying to think, how is she going to get to on the other side of the veil? Because there's all these stories where people, like, they fall down a well and they end up in the Fey realm. Like, how does she get there? So she starts telling the story of the castle. And that, I think this is around the time that she starts to realize that the story she was telling is about Gilded. So the story about Gilded ends with that he rode back to the castle and found his own castle, realized that everybody was dead. The Alder King is sitting on the throne. He shoots an arrow into his wrist with this gold tip, and this gold tip bound him to the castle. And so that his history, and he not just bound him to the castle, but put a spell on him that when he would forget his name would be erased from history. He would forget everything about himself. And so as far as the king is aware, he knows that Gild's the prince, but he does not know that Gild is the one who can spin the gold. That is like a very big thing. He just thinks he's a nuisance. So Cirilla is able to open up a door into the other side. So she goes there, and the king is there with the spirits of the four children that she found. And he ends up taking her outside to do a big demonstration. But she looks up and she sees that Gild has been tied up by the ropes. Now, luckily, the only reason Gild is tied up with the ropes is because the king thinks that he stole that bobbin. He doesn't know anything that there's any connection between Gild and Cirilla. So he sits her down at the spinning wheel and everything to have her do this big demonstration, right? And she's like, how the heck am I going to do this? I can't really spin straw into gold. Now, I thought she was going to make up a story where she could, and that would mean that she actually could. But this is when we come to find out that when she made that bargain with Gild, she would give him her firstborn child. The magic took that literally. And she is now pregnant with Gild's child. So she realizes this because she realizes that she missed her period and all that stuff, and she tells the king, I'm pregnant. The power is now the child's. So at first the king is like, okay, we're gonna get rid of it so you can have your power back. And she's like, no, don't, please. And then he's like, and then she's like, well, if you kill me, then like I'm blessed by this god, and now my child is blessed by this god. You're gonna anger the gods. And he's like, okay, fine. Then I'm gonna marry you. And she's like, oh, I did not see that coming. And I was like, I did not see that coming either, girl. What the fuck? So it's like this weird twist on the princess, on the girl marrying the king kind of thing. And so he basically does the same thing that he did to Gild to her. So her spirit is outside of her body, but her body is laying there. So it's very confusing on whether she, as the spirit, has the child, or if her body's going to grow with the child inside of her, which is a thought. I don't even know. But he's like, I'm gonna take the child. I'm going to claim the child as my own, and you are going to go along with it. You're going to marry me and all that. And then at the end, she is talking to Gild, but then she's like, she wants to tell Gild the child is actually his, but she's also afraid that the king is going to hurt the children. And come to find out, that fifth child that was missing, he actually killed them too. And that was really messed up. So she tells Gild that the story she was telling him is actually real. It's him. And he's like, what am I supposed to do? There's a curse. What do I do? She's like, you're cursed, but curses can be broken. And that's kind of where the story ends. But there's that, I'm talking really fast because I'm running out of time. But there's that question of, she promised Gild her firstborn child, but also the king claimed the child. So it's like, who's gonna, it's weird. It's weird, and I'm curious how this is all gonna go. I'm not sure when I probably will start. I think the next book got cursed, but I'm not 100% sure. So yeah, I'm gonna go home now. So, because I can feel my headache coming back, which is not fun. So yeah, thank you. Mwah.